Okay, hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today is a slightly different video because I'm actually not doing, this is not a vlog, this is my first sit down video on this channel. I thought that while I'm here at my mum and dad's and I've got a bit of time that I could do a Q&A. Let's do it, why not? So I put something on my Instagram yesterday to ask for questions and I've got my little prompt here because brain fog, and I've got my cup of tea. I would strongly suggest that you go and make yourself a nice drink, get yourself a little snack, get yourself settled, you know. Let's get started. The question that I get the most often and that I got a lot yesterday was, what do I do for work? Now, I appreciate that I don't really talk about my work on here. And that's partly because what I do is actually not very exciting. I am basically a project manager and I'm a civil servant. So what that means is that I work for the UK government. I work for a specific government department as a project manager. For those of you who don't know, a civil servant basically in the UK is somebody who works kind of on behalf of the government but doesn't represent the government. So in the UK, civil servants deliver policies and changes that the government at the time wants to put in place. The main thing about civil servants is that we are instructed to be impartial, meaning that we can't talk very openly, we're allowed to have opinions and stuff, but in terms of social media, we can't really talk that openly about our politics or our opinions on certain things because that's just in our code of conduct. So hence why I don't talk too much about my job on here, because we're not really supposed to, not that it's some great big secret, but it doesn't really feel that relevant, and it's just my day job. So that's why I don't talk about politics a huge amount on social media, because I'm not really allowed to, which I do find difficult sometimes. But yeah, I really love the particular department that I work for. I work in kind of sort of the environment, agriculture, food sector, but as a project manager. So my job is to make sure that people do things on time, that we're on time to deliver stuff. I like working in the public sector. It feels quite fulfilling. It's easy to make an impact and it's very flexible. So that's why I love it. What are some things in your flat / your life that bring you joy? For me, my home is very, very important. It is where I spend the majority of my time, and for me it's incredibly important that my home feels safe, that it feels like it functions well. So for me, the things that bring me joy are nice lighting, soft lighting. That is normally a rule in my house, no big lights. We have this incredible pull-out sofa which pulls out to make a sofa bed, and we use it pretty much as a sofa bed every evening. So we've got a lovely projector which we watch TV on, and a pull-out sofa, which means that everyone is comfy, everyone can stretch their legs out. It's a great time for all involved. My jelly cats, they bring me a lot of joy. They really nurture my inner child, and I just love having nice sensory things around in each room of the house. I love looking at my bookshelves. It brings me a lot of joy. They're all pretty well organized at the moment, but particularly the ones in the living room are organized in a way that I personally find really satisfying. So it's a lot of my favorite books that are kind of categorized in a way that only really makes sense to me, but it brings me a lot of joy and is very satisfying and is quite reflective of my experience reading those particular books. So that's something that brings me a lot of joy. And generally just being able to kind of sit back and look around and see the hard work that I've put into my space paying off. You know, when my plants are doing really well, when the garden is thriving, when my books look great, when it feels like I've been spending a lot of money on stuff and then it kind of all comes together and feels really like coherent and lovely and reflective of the kind of space that I want to live in. And kind of on that note, someone asked how I'm finding settling into a new home. I am actually very settled. I'm very, very happy in our new home. We've lived there for probably 4 or 5 months now. I've moved around quite a lot in my life, so I don't find it too difficult to I don't find transitions in that sense that difficult. I'm quite used to sort of letting a place go and then growing attached to a new place quite quickly. There are still certain things where I'm like, oh, I kind of would like this to be a little bit better, or this still doesn't feel quite right, but in general I feel really settled and I feel really happy. Someone asked for tips for embracing the soft life This is such a good question. I really think that in general, it depends on the kind of person that you are. I think a soft life for everybody will look different. I am probably one of the biggest introverts that I've ever come across in my whole life. So a lot of my softness comes through spending a lot of time on my own, because that personally brings me a lot of joy. However, I would say that even if you're an extrovert, one of my biggest tips is to try and get comfy spending time on your own. Try and get comfortable with silence. Try and get comfortable just being with your own thoughts. I'm somebody who really enjoys quiet, who enjoys silence. Even when I'm hanging out with other people, I really love it when people can be quiet with me, when we can just get on with our separate things, when we don't need to fill the void all of the time with chat. Yeah, I feel very comfortable spending time on my own. I haven't always. I think in the past, spending time on my own meant having a lot of distraction, whereas now I'm definitely more comfortable just being completely quiet and not having anything to offset the noise in my brain. Sometimes I quite like just letting it do its thing, letting my brain do its thing. But that does also, I think, go hand in hand with my next point, which is therapy. I appreciate that it's not accessible to everybody, and that for like loads of different reasons in terms of cost or time or anything. However, if you can access it, therapy is really, really good for getting to a place where you are okay with the thoughts in your brain. I wouldn't suggest just kind of letting your brain run free if it's quite a dark and depressing place to be, and mine definitely did used to be a very dark and depressing place to be, and it still sometimes can be. I've struggled with like on and off with depression and anxiety for basically my whole life. I'm kind of now four years deep into regular therapy, and it's definitely made me feel more at peace with myself and with my thoughts, and I feel like my brain is a much healthier, safer place for me to be, hence why I don't mind having it, you know, on in the background kind of thing. I really think that therapy has helped me be more compassionate and empathetic towards other people, and I really believe that compassion and empathy, they go such a long way in kind of reducing tension and resistance in your life in general. Tension with yourself, but also tension with other people, resistance towards people that you don't really agree with, or that you find difficult to be around, or that you clash with. So I think therapy, it's changed my life. It's made me a much better person to be around. I'm like much better friend, girlfriend, sister, daughter because of it. And also I'm much better to myself. I'm a much better person for myself to be spending time with 24/7, because like you take yourself with you wherever you go, so make it a nice place to be, make yourself a nice person to be around, because you're with yourself all the time. So that's a big tip for me in kind of getting to a softer place in life. I also think that a big tip for me is like really identifying the things that bring you joy, you know, just almost to like offset the things in your life that aren't great, because you won't be able to change everything. You know, I still have to work full time. It's not my favorite. I kind of wish that I didn't have to. I'm sure my quality of life would be way better if I wasn't working, like full stop. But I know that that is offset in the majority by the things that do bring me joy. And take the break. I really believe that most people need and want more rest than they are admitting. You just need to be honest with yourself. Like, I know that I can keep going, but should I, and do I really want to? Like, what do I actually want to do right now? People will be drawn to that, and I know that I'm not the friend who everyone, oh, will you do this with me? Or like, should we go here? Should we go there? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Like, I'm not that friend. But I am the friend that people come to when they want a break, when they want to rest, when they want to feel comfortable, when they want to not talk very much. That for me, doing that for myself has helped other people embrace that. So yeah, I don't know if any of that makes sense. Literally RIP me trying to edit this video. Fucking hell. Okay, how do you lift your mood when you're feeling down? I think that there are different kinds of down. There are different types of low mood, and I think it's important to learn for yourself what those look like. So for example, for me, sometimes I know that I need distraction and numbing, in which case, to lift myself up, I will put some trash TV on. Like, I literally watch every shit reality TV show under the sun. I love it. I don't feel super attached to it, but it does serve a purpose in my life. Sometimes it's a sensory thing where like I haven't had very much soothing sensory input all day because I've been at my desk and I feel stressed and I feel overwhelmed, and I just need to do something that will give me pleasure in a sensory way, but also that will take me out of my mind and into my body. In which case that numbing is not actually going to help, even though that might feel like what I want to do. Scrolling and watching shit TV is actually not what I want at that time. So when it's that, I will do something like gardening. I'll repot a plant. I'll let myself just potter around the house with absolutely no agenda. And this for me is really easy to do. I'll just stand up and I'll go into a room and I'll kind of have a look around, and I'll just start moving things. If something catches my eye, I'll be like, oh, this needs moving, this needs doing. I'll start kind of cutting dead leaves off my plants, whatever is pulling me in at that particular moment. And I won't get frustrated with myself if I don't stay on track, because that's not the point. The point is to just let myself potter with absolutely no agenda. For me, pottering is actually a really big part of my self-care. Sometimes you just need a good cry, sometimes you need to talk it through with somebody, sometimes you need social interaction. Sometimes I actually am like, you know what, I've not left the house in X amount of time and I think I need to feel human outside, and that is often the last thing I want to do, but I know that it will help me in that moment. So I think it's important to figure out for yourself what those different moments are so that you can distinguish what you need, and then have a couple of different options for yourself. Now it's quite natural, but a good place to start is, if you're not sure what you need, is by journaling or asking yourself the questions, how am I feeling, and be specific. How am I feeling and what am I going to do about it? Those are the two questions that I often ask myself. Just be open. Stuff will come up for yourself of like, do you know what, I really want to do this, and then do it. That's what I would say. How did you become such good friends with Hannah? So, for those of you who don't know, which I would assume is barely any of you, Hannah May is originally Let's Talk About Books baby throwback, for anyone who remembers. And she's a really good friend of mine, and we've been online friends for about 2 or 3 years now. It started off that we just ended up sort of following each other. I think basically an account that had quite a lot of followers shared a post of mine, and then I kind of got quite a big influx of followers, and Hannah was one of them. And I sort of just randomly followed her back because I quite liked her photos and she seemed to talk about books and that kind of thing. So I followed her back, and then slowly we started commenting a bit more, like chatting a little bit more. This was still on both of our personal accounts before either of us had a book account. And then we both realised that we both have chronic illnesses and we both love reading. And for some reason it just stuck. Like, I don't really know how or why. There's no specific reason, I don't think. We were both someone that the other needed at the time. I really needed somebody to help me feel seen and heard in my chronic illness, which Hannah was a little bit further on in her journey at the time. Hannah needed a friend. I don't really know what she needed out of me, but she did, whatever it was. That's essentially how we became friends, and now we're just in very deep. We stay at each other's houses. She's met my whole family. She's coming on our family holiday with Tom in August, so we're just besties now, and it's great. Hannah, if there's anything I've missed, please comment below. The next question is, what is your favourite thing about your siblings and family members? I am one of 3 siblings. I'm the oldest sister. I love my family a lot. We're very close. We've been through a lot as a family. All of us have kind of experienced and been through different things over the years that has made us very close, so I do feel very lucky to have the family that I do. I think my favourite thing about my dad is that he takes everything at face value. This is probably the thing I appreciate about him the most, in particular when it comes to like my younger brother who's trans. There's no questions asked. These are the pronouns that you're using. This is what we're doing. Okay, this is how you feel. Right, like, let's move on. How can I support you? Like, there's no messing about with how he feels about it. That's just the kind of person that he is, and I really appreciate it. I think it's a really good trait to have within a family dynamic. And while like being serious when he needs to be, he is also so funny and so silly, and just is loved by everyone who meets him. Like, all my friends are obsessed with him, so he's fantastic. Me and my mum are very similar. I probably get most of my personality from my mum, but I think my favourite thing about my mum is that she is just the best advocate. She's taught me how to stand up for myself, especially when it comes to health stuff and health appointments, and when you have to really advocate for yourself and not take shit from people. She is the biggest example of that in my life, and I appreciate that about her so much. My middle sister Lucy is just so full of love and so She's just fantastic. She just really tries her best and she's just great to have around. She makes you feel good. She is really good socially, something that I struggle with a lot. So even when I was younger, I would rely on her quite a lot to like do a lot of social heavy lifting. We have a really good relationship now, which hasn't always been the case. So that is something I'm really, really grateful for. Tamar, my little brother, he is just the best, like a piece of my heart. Tamar is fucking funny. Tamar is an absolute chaotic but lovable liability. And my favourite thing about Tamar is how they can just like lift the energy in a room and just how lovable he is. That's just my favourite thing. I don't know how else to say it, but in general with my family, I just love how we work as a five. I love how accepting they are of other people. A lot of our friends feel quite like safe and at home with my parents and with my family, and that means a lot to me. I wouldn't know where I'd be without them, to be quite honest. Where is your jewellery from? Basically, when COVID hit and I was working from home full time and not paying rent, I spent all of my money on jewellery. And that's why I now have quite a nice jewellery collection. So it's not something that I buy a lot of now because I can't really afford it. But the existing jewellery collection that I do have, thanks to past me, who's frivolous with her spending, is from either Missima, Daisy Jewellery, Astrid and Miyu. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's like, for the price, that it's aged the best. I don't think that it's actually super worth it. So I kind of make do with the collection that I've got, which is a very beautiful collection of jewellery, but if you look too closely you can see that it's tarnished. I've had a couple of questions about living in London. Someone asked for tips for living in London. I'm not, to be honest, not the best person for this because I don't leave my house very much. But tips for me living in London is having a good few pairs of noise cancelling headphones. I personally can't leave the house without any, including like loops and flares for like earplugs for kind of filtering out noise. I think probably my biggest tip is that so much is free. Everything in London is basically free. Like all of the museums are free, all of the parks are free. Yeah, my favourite things to do are walking along South Bank. Say I'm meeting up with a friend, I'll like find somewhere that has a nice walk, a good brunch / coffee place and a bookshop, and there's loads of places that have kind of all of that in the vicinity. But again, I don't really leave my house, so you probably know more than me. How did you manage to find such a cute place in the hellhole that is the London real estate market? Hun, with great difficulty is how we managed to find such a cute place. When we moved in February, there were just more people looking than there actually were properties to live in. I think you need to have somebody on your team, either in your relationship, like one of you, or in the friendship group that you're moving in with. There needs to be one person who is going to be the chaser, the admin person, the person who's going to write snarky emails to your estate agent, the person who's going to not be ashamed to like ring up multiple times a day if you've not heard back. Like things like that are quite important because that can kind of be the difference between getting a place or not, is being an annoying person on the end of the phone. Like that was me, I am her, and that is quite difficult, and I needed a lot of mental health support during that time, but that I think is how we got into our flat when we did. And try to give yourself a bit of overlap, even if it's just a week of like wiggle room in case things go wrong, which they did for us this time around, and it was fucking stressful, but that week meant that it wasn't the end of the world. But at the same time, like, me and Ben are very privileged in that we both have quite stable, secure incomes. We're both in quite traditional jobs, so we can clearly give an earning figure that is going to be respected. I completely understand that for people who work freelance, that is just not the case, and it's really difficult. Okay, so those are all of the more lifey type questions. I also got a lot of book questions, but I actually am going to go for a walk with Ben now because he has a break, and then I'll be back where I'm going to answer all your book questions. I'll see you in literally a second, but I will have actually been and gone, so be right back. Welcome back to part 2. So I'm back now, and I've slightly moved around because I need something to lean my back against because I am apparently 75 years old. So the first question on books is, how did your passion for reading start? So I have definitely been an avid reader since I was really young. I always got a lot of kind of extra attention when it came to like reading bedtime stories, and my dad read me all of the Narnia books. I just very quickly fell in love with being able to live in worlds that are very different to mine. I have quite an active imagination, extremely active when I was young. So I think to have that feeling be so accessible of take me out of this situation I'm currently in into a different situation, especially when it came to fantasy, but kind of anything really. I just really enjoyed being very gripped by a book and being all consumed by it and being able to close my eyes and in my mind's eye see everything that's happening. And I think as a kid, reading was also something that gave me an out when I was feeling overwhelmed, particularly at school, kind of at lunch times or in break times. If I was feeling like not socializing, not hanging out with the friends who I was always seeing during my lessons, and I just wanted to go somewhere and be by myself, I could do that with a book. I would just go and find like a quiet classroom, a quiet corridor somewhere, and just sit and read for half an hour, for an hour. And then someone asked what's my favourite thing about being an avid reader. I think the things that I just spoke about, the reasons why I got into reading quite young, they still apply. The things that I love about being an avid reader are being able to learn and experience so much without going anywhere, without doing anything. And that's partly because, you know, as someone with chronic illness, you're limited in what you can do, but also as a person in your one situation, in your one body, in your one life experience, being able to kind of dip in and out of all of these different stories and times in history and experiences that you will never get to experience, is, you know, using that as an opportunity to just learn loads is what I love. It gives me an escape when I feel overwhelmed. It's something that I actually need. Reading is something that I need in order to feel well in my brain. Reading gives me something to talk about in social situations, which is not a reason why I read, but it's an extra bonus. I know that I can always rely on the question of, oh, do you like reading? Have you read anything interesting lately? I have yet to meet somebody who has just flat out been like, nah, that's not, I don't really read. I do find that people, even if they're not active, like an active reader, it's still something that they think about. It's still something that they would like to do or that they used to enjoy doing, and then we can, you know, swap book recommendations. I've built a lot of new friendships around reading, both online and in real life. The next question is from my friend Molly online, who I absolutely love, and she's asked me a very Molly question, and I have a feeling that she's asked me this not just for the benefit of this video, but also so that she knows exactly what kinds of books she can give me as presents, because she is fantastic gift giver, particularly of books. So she asked me, describe a Siska book in 3 themes. And I will say that I'm not really a very picky reader. I do read very widely across different genres. But there are a few things that will make a book absolutely stand out to me. So the first thing that I really love in books is kind of very well written social observations, whether that is about the relationships depicted in the book, family dynamics, really astute and accurate and interesting observations about the world, the world and the people. I love a book that is witty, like when it's a serious book that then suddenly comes out with this really sharp, witty, funny dialogue or narration or something like that. I just like when a book kind of unexpectedly makes you laugh. It's particularly when it's like quite dry, sarcastic humour. I just really love that. I would say that generally I prefer books that are not written by men. That isn't a blanket rule. I would say it's particularly cis, straight, white men. If a book is gonna be written by somebody of that description, it's gotta be fucking great, like absolutely top tier. Those are the kind of stories that interest me. I wouldn't say it's a prerequisite, but I would probably say that about 85 to 95% of the books that I read are written by anyone other than a straight cis white man. Examples of these books are On Beauty by Zadie Smith, The Wolf Hall Trilogy by Hilary Mantel, The Birthday Party by Laurent Mauvignier, which that is, for me, that was a standout book, and that is written by a straight white cis man. So, I'm not saying that I don't read them, I'm just saying that if it's gonna be that, it needs to be fantastic, and for me that book was fantastic. Both The Idiot and Either Or by Elif Batuman, Detransition Baby by Tori Peters. There are obviously loads of other books that don't have all of those things that I also absolutely love. But this is this type of book is like my comfort book. It's the kind of book that I will always love, that I always have loved, and that I will always recommend. So yeah, I hope that answered your question, Molly. What is a book that has recently made you cry? Okay, so most recently, I think the most recent book that made me fully cry, like sob, was Happy Place by Emily Henry. The things that without fail will make me cry are, it's particularly in romantic settings, but kind of in any sort of setting, like any kind of relationship dynamic where the two people have to be separated for some reason, or like they can't be together for some reason, like Romeo and Juliet vibes, you know, that kind of tragedy. Emily Henry's writing, I do find, is like hits a spot for me. She always writes excellently and conveys emotion so well in such a relatable way that like I feel exactly what she's describing on the page. Say what you want about Happy Place, not everyone loved it. I actually personally really enjoyed it. I think I found it very relatable because of the kind of relationship that I'm in. You know, a long-term relationship, it's definitely a different type of romance. That is the most recent book that made me like actually sob, not just tear up, but like weep. I wept. What is a book that made you feel seen? So I've written 4 books down. Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. This is one of my favourite books of all time. It's probably my most borrowed book. It's definitely my most recommended book. The descriptions of what it is to be a disabled person in pain, being observed by the world, moving through a world that doesn't necessarily see you for who you really are and makes assumptions about you immediately on sight, and balancing that with what you feel like is going on inside of you and how you navigate that world. That really made me feel seen. Too Much and Not the Mood by Durga Chubose. That was an essay collection that I read recently. Again, we have like different experiences of how we've grown up. I'm obviously white, Chubose is not, and she has like talks about the experience of growing up second generation immigrant and how she navigates the world from that perspective. But there are a lot of other things about the author and about her essays that made me feel so seen, particularly how she talks about being an introvert. She has this whole essay which talks about Nook people and describes Nook people, and I really related to that a lot. Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. I'm sure that a lot of you will have read this book, but I read it last summer again, and it's just a very beautiful, well written and readable novel about mental health. And then finally, I Choose Elena by Lucia Osborne Crowley. I absolutely love Lucia. I really enjoy following her on Instagram and Twitter, and I think she's an incredible writer. But this book in particular is about her experience of sexual assault and endometriosis, chronic illness, disability, and just sort of as a bit of a memoir kind of relating to all of that. And her writing in that is just, yeah, was exactly what I needed to hear at the time. What is your favourite genre and why? Okay, so one of my favourite kind of sub genres of reading is women in translation. There's just something about a book that has already been like expertly crafted in its original language by the author, right? And then on top of that you have an extra layer of craft, which is the translation. And it's almost like a book has been written twice. Like, I don't know if you get what I mean, but a lot of my favourite books are made up of translated fiction. Do you only finish books you love, or do you finish all the books you start? It's quite rare for me to DNF a book, just because I don't think I'm that easily disappointed by a book to the point where I think it's worth putting down. Actually, there are a few examples of books where I know that had I read them, had I picked them up before I eventually did, I probably would have put them down. Like an example of that is the Wolf Hall trilogy. I wanted to love them, so I waited for a time where I knew I kind of would love them and I was ready to read them. I see absolutely no shame in DNFing a book. I think you absolutely should. If you know in your heart of hearts that this is just not going anywhere for you, there are so many books out there and we only have so many days on this planet. So read what you want to read, and if a book is not worth it to you, if a book is not worth your time, put it down. It doesn't have feelings. How do you choose your next read? So I'm very much a mood reader. The only themes I tend to generally stick to are Women in Translation Month, which is August. I really plan my books for holidays, and also I quite like to match my books to the seasons. Not always, but particularly if I'm going on a summer holiday or in the winter, there is definitely a difference in the types of books that I gravitate towards, and also where I'm at with my reading at the time. If I'm noticing that I'm struggling to kind of see books through, and I'm picking up a new book before finishing another one, and I'm not going back to it, I know I maybe need to switch up the kinds of things that I'm reading. If I feel like I'm in quite a good spot with my reading, you know, that reading muscle is like prepped and primed, ready to go, and I feel ready for something a bit more challenging, something that's going to take a little bit longer, that's maybe a bit more of a slow burn, or playing the long game rather than like quick satisfaction. What are your least favourite books? So I actually don't have that many books which I absolutely hated. Even if I didn't love a book, I always feel, most of the time I feel like I will have got something out of it. However, there are a couple of books that come to mind when I think that book was just not it, and I will never recommend it. In fact, I will do everything I can to make sure no one picks it up ever again. The first of these is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So random, but I did read it a couple of years ago, and unfortunately bought like all of the books before reading the first one, just because I thought, oh, this will be fun. Stupid move, stupid. I just felt like it was offensive in so many ways. It was really offensive about mental health and disability. There were some really offensive descriptions of the main protagonist. It was a pretty sexist book and just very gratuitous in terms of the violence. Another book that I really didn't like is Small Pleasures by Claire Chambers, and I did actually write a pretty scathing review of this on Instagram a few years ago, which again I don't really review books that I didn't like. If I didn't like it, I probably won't talk about it, but oh my god, this book really got under my skin. For me, my least favourite books is anything that talks about mental health or disability in a really tropey, harmful and dated way, just for the sake of the suspense. It feels unnecessary, and it really pisses me off. I feel very strongly about mental health, and people very close to me have suffered with less palatable mental health conditions, things like psychosis or schizophrenia or bipolar, things outside of anxiety and depression that aren't talked about on Mental Health Awareness Day, mental illnesses that are still really misunderstood by the general public and still have a lot of harmful stereotyping around them. Actually, both of these books did that, but particularly Small Pleasures. I mean, it was written very recently. Yeah, sure, it was set in like a different time, but I just don't understand it. And the fact that a lot of people loved that book and talked about it a lot online and wrote really good reviews about it, it just baffled me. Like, those are two books that I feel incredibly strongly about. There's not many of them. That is, I hope people won't get mad at me, but this is a hill I actually will die on, so let's fight if you want to fight. No, I'm joking. I'm a lover, not a fighter. You're only allowed 5 authors' bodies of work in a castaway situation. Who do you pick? This question fucking sent me into an absolute existential crisis. I have 4, and then I'm not sure on my 5th. The 4 that immediately came to mind were Elena Ferrante. Already have read most of her back catalogue, absolutely love, will read everything she writes. Elif Batuman, again, has only written 2 books, but another author that I will read everything that she writes. Absolutely love her. Kayla Bazuma Nelson, 2 books, loved each one, will read everything this man writes. And Zadie Smith. Those 4 authors are like top tier for me. Something I'm missing from this, although Zadie Smith does write essays, and like short stories and stuff. The 2 things I'm missing from this list are like essay writers or like memoir. So probably for that, I would either go with Nina Minyard-Powell's or Annie Ernaux. Or what I'm missing is some like quick, pacey, saucy, smutty fantasy. And for that, I would probably go Sarah J Maas. There will be opinions, but I have loved everything that woman has ever written. I'm sorry to say it. Sorry. That's a very eclectic mix we've got there. My mum asked me this question, bless her. How do you read without falling asleep when you're tired? I don't. If I'm falling asleep while I'm reading, then I sleep. I think if you find that you're only ever falling asleep when you're reading, then you maybe need to switch up the types of books that you're reading or where you're reading. So like, instead of giving yourself 20 minutes at the end of the day before you go to bed, give yourself that 20 minutes somewhere else. Yeah, that's my tip for you, mother. This is the final question. If I were to write a book, what kind of book would it be and what would it be about? So I'm definitely not a writer, and I don't think I ever will write a book. just because it seems like there's a lot of work involved. I'm a reader, not a writer, I think. I'd love writing for myself and kind of sharing bits here and there, but I don't think it will ever mean enough to me to want to put loads of work into a whole project and go through all of the faff of getting it published. Faff. I have so much respect for people who can do it and who feel passionately enough about it to put all of that work in, and that's what produces great work. Like, if I'm not passionate enough about it, what I produce is not going to be that great, so I don't think you'd want to read it anyway. However, if I was to write a book, I think it would either be some kind of collection of essays or like a novella slash some kind of short stories. What would it be about? Probably, yeah, the things that are kind of the biggest things in my life. So pain, home, both the concept of home and what home means to me, and also like my home, my space, my environment, what that means to me. Like quite a lot of self-reflection, softness, learning to be soft in a world that wants you to be hard and tough and brave and strong all the time. Yeah, I have said a lot of stuff and I feel like it's going to be like an hour of footage to edit down, and I think this might be a very, very long video. So if you've made it to the end, well done, you deserve a treat. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this has satisfied some of your curiosity. And thank you for submitting questions. I really wasn't sure if I would get enough to even be able to make a video, but it seemed like I actually got way more than I bargained for. So I really appreciate everybody being nosy and engaging. Yeah, that's everything, I think. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.